Is your priority date current? The February 2026 Visa Bulletin is officially out, and while some of you are getting your green light to file your green card application, to start putting together your DS-260, your affidavit of support, others are still facing a frustrating standstill. If you are the spouse of a green card holder or waiting on a family preference category to become current, you need to see these dates and you need to pay attention to the Visa Bulletin every single month because you never know when your date will become current. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. First, we are going to start with the most important news for everyone that will be applying for adjustment of status in the U.S. For February 2026, USCIS has confirmed they are honoring the date for filing chart for all family-based categories. That means that instead of using the final action date chart, they are going to be using the filing date chart for when you can start applying for your adjustment of status in the U.S. And why is this a big deal? Because the filing date chart is typically further ahead than the final action date chart, which means your priority date when it's current on the filing action date chart means that you're going to be able to start filing your adjustment of status with USCIS that much sooner than if it was based on the final action date chart. And with that green card application that you can now file, you will also be able to apply for your work permit and have that processing until your green card becomes final. So this is important, so pay attention. And yes, I know that system is changing every single day, and that's why I do these videos to keep you up to date on what's going on and make sure that you're paying attention to the things that will and can affect your case, like the Visa Bulletin. As always, when we go through the Visa Bulletin, we are looking at both the previous month and the future month. So we're looking at January 2026 and February 2026. And we are always going to go through the categories because, again, you need to know what the categories are, because once I start saying F1, F2A, F2B, F3, F4, what does that even mean? So let's start there once again. So F1 is the unmarried sons and daughters of U.S. citizens. So these are children of U.S. citizens that are over the age of 21. F2A are the spouses and children of permanent residents. These are children under the age of 21 and unmarried. F2B are the unmarried sons and daughters of permanent residents. So children over the age of 21 but unmarried. F3 are the married sons and daughters of U.S. citizens, and F4 are the siblings, brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. It's important to note, as always, that only U.S. citizens can file for their married children, and only U.S. citizens can file for their parents, and only U.S. citizens can file for their siblings. So let's look at the movement. There wasn't a lot of movements, but let's look at them anyway. So we have now the final action chart. The final action chart basically tells us when the U.S. Embassy or USCIS is allowed to make a decision on a case that's in one of these categories. So typically, every single category has a number of visas available to them every single year. And this Visa Bulletin is the reason it exists is to tell us when is that number ready to be approved. When is your number up, right? When is your priority date current? So they can only approve so many visas a year, and the final action date tells them what priority date of visas that they can start approving, all right? So the final action date chart for February did not move much. So for F1, the only movement is for Mexico. It went to December 22, 2006. For F2A, it stayed the same. For F2B, we can see that Mexico went up to February 15, 2009. That's a good movement. F3 and F4 stayed the same. So the only movements that we see for February in the final action chart is for Mexico and in the categories of F1 and F2B only. Now let's move on to the next chart, which is the date for filing chart. Like I said before, the date for filing chart is when USCIS can start accepting your green card application if you are in the US and qualify to apply for adjustment of status in the US. And when it comes to the embassy, this is when the National Visa Center will start asking you to go ahead and start filling out your DS-260, fill out your affidavit of support, all of that. So this is what this chart does for you. And it's good to know this so that you know when you can actually start expecting news from the National Visa Center. Okay? For the date for filing chart, we can see that for F1, Mexico is the only country that has movement. It went to December 1st, 2007. F2A, everyone jumped up 1 month to January 22nd, 2026. For F2B, again, only Mexico had movement, and it went to February 15, 2010. F3 and F4 stayed the same. Now, like I said, February did not have a lot of movement. Mexico is the big winner here. Mexico had movement where other countries didn't, okay? The only place other countries have movement is on the date for filing chart, and that's for F2A. Every other movement that happened, whether it happened in the date for filing chart or the final action date chart, happened for Mexico. And that probably has to do with the number of visas available specifically for Mexico and the number of visas they were able to get through for Mexico. So what does this mean for you as you are moving through your immigration journey and waiting for your priority date to be current? If you are an F2A, the spouse of a permanent resident or the minor child of a permanent resident, you may now be in a place where your priority date is current, which means once your I-130 is approved, if you're outside of the US, the embassy can send you the information right away to start doing your DS-260. If you are in the US and you qualify for adjustment of status, this means if your priority date is current, you can go ahead and start applying for adjustment of status in the US and also applying for a work permit with that adjustment of status application. Like I said before, Mexico is the big winner here. But for the rest of the world, we are waiting, okay? You are going to have to wait. Patience is going to be key, and paying attention to the Visa Bulletin is going to be helpful to you moving forward. Now, here's a quick pro tip for you if you are stuck in the backlogs of it all, whether it's the family-based category backlog or the employment-based category backlog. Here's the thing. If you are currently in the US, you entered with a valid visa, you maybe currently be in an H-1B, an L-1, an F-1, and you are currently married to a US citizen. Why are you still in line, honey? You can skip the line because your priority date as the spouse of a US citizen is always current. 365, it is always current, which means you can file for your adjustment of status and your I-130 at the same time because you are married to a US citizen. Okay, immediate relatives of US citizens get to skip the wait-in of the Visa Bulletin. You don't have to look at the Visa Bulletin because your priority date is always current. And in my office, we see people switch from that employment-based to the marriage-based, switch from student to the marriage-based. Because guess what? You're in the US, you've built a life here, you've gotten married, you've had kids, and you're still waiting for the application that was filed by your parents? Honey, you can switch to marriage-based through your spouse. And that's going to be a quicker process for you than waiting on the Visa Bulletin. All right? Now, as always, if you find this video helpful, do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more immigration deep dives like talking about the Visa Bulletin. If you have specific questions about the Visa Bulletin or any other immigration related matter, put it in the comments. And if you would like a consultation with me where we talk about your situation, see if you're able to switch your category, right? And see if you qualify for adjustment of status, please go ahead and reach out to me. You can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, click on contact us, and you can pick a date and time that works best for you for us to chat about your case.